All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these things we can do, with China. And you talk a lot about the supply chains as something that Trump has been talking about, and how we're really heavily dependent on them for the PPE and the pharmaceuticals. And just want to also get your thoughts on that, and what we can do to protect ourselves from this. I guess it's enemy, right?
It really is. The Chinese Communist Party, and they say it in document number nine. I highly encourage people to read document number nine. It's a short document that was an internal Chinese Communist Party document that's been translated into English. And you can see that free speech, that is a concept designed by the West, according to this document, specifically designed to undermine and overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. So these things we hold to be true as universal values or universal human rights, they believe to be fundamentally designed to destroy their rule over the Chinese people. And so that makes them, by their own definition, an enemy of democracy, not just of the United States, an enemy of democracy and of democratic principles and of human rights and of civil liberties and rule of law. And so when we understand that, then we can understand the more that we allow them into our societies, the more danger they become to us, because they can use all of these tools of openness and globalization and the internet to undermine our institutions. And that's exactly what they've done. They've undermined our university system. They've undermined our political system. They've undermined our legal system. They've undermined our, the think tanks and lobbying groups within the United States in particular. They've undermined our corporate sector. They've undermined our financial sector. So all of these elements that are used to promote the prosperity and freedom and sovereignty of the American people in the case of the US, and they do this, by the way, to other democracies as well, are all things that their system is designed to attack directly. So they don't go after a target like a building. They go after an institution. They go after the relationships of people. They go after the motivations of certain leaders that make certain decisions that favor or disfavor the Communist Party. These are all things that they do. So this idea of decoupling, not just economic decoupling, but social decoupling from the influence of the Chinese Communist Party, is such an important idea. And I think it's really not widely understood, because the influence that the regime has over much of the free world is not widely understood. But as we've come to know more of this through the coronavirus, you can see that there's a need for this decoupling from the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And the way that that's done today primarily is by reducing the economic interdependence between free countries and authoritarian regimes like China. And so the way you do that for us in the United States is there's three primary means. One is to essentially deal with the fact that China is a non-market economy. So that means tariffs have to be made permanent on their goods. Deal with the fact that Chinese companies don't meet the same audit and transparency requirements as US companies, and therefore can't have their stocks or bonds registered or listed on US capital markets. And deal with the fact that US corporations can't bring their assets out of China because they have a non-convertible currency and strict capital controls. And then when you deal with those three things, the inability for them to sell their goods here without a tariff, their inability to attract capital or investment from corporations in China, then you're gonna really create a separation of the two economies. When you do that, there's also going to be a sort of social decoupling. So it's okay to be essentially engaged with the Chinese people, but we have to be engaged under the conditions of democracy, not under the conditions of totalitarianism. So to this point, the Chinese Communist Party has set the conditions for our engagement with the Chinese people, and we've allowed that. What we didn't do during the Cold War was allow the Soviet Union to set the conditions for how we engage the people that were struggling under the repression of the Soviet Union. And what I'm talking about there is public diplomacy. Our ability to transmit our own values and principles into China to the Chinese people as an alternative view on the world, compared to what the Chinese Communist Party gives them. We've defunded that. We got rid of the U.S. Information Agency, which was an independent agency responsible for promoting the values and principles of democracy to the free world. We've defunded things like the Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, and we've also created there's a conflicted personage in those agencies because they have what they believe to be conflicting guiding statements. One is you must maintain journalistic principles and journalistic independence, and the other is you must promote U.S. Principles and values. And so what they take that to mean is that they have to promote or essentially allow airtime, equal airtime between the say U.S. Principles and values and the principles and values of, for Radio Free Asia, Iran, the regime of Iran or the regime of China. So now you have Radio Free Asia essentially promoting the propaganda with equal weight as U.S. principles and values. And so these are ways that our system of promoting our principles and values into the world have been subverted by our own kind of, inability to recognize, what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. We saw this when I was at the White House when there was riots in Iran, and our own Radio Free Asia was basically retweeting what the Tehran government was saying about the rioters, right? And you look at it and you're filled with horror because you realize that here's this tyrannical regime that's killing its own people, and in a sense, Radio Free Asia is promoting it. So these are the things that, that we need to think of as really the motivators of national security in a 21st century sense. It is an ideological war. It is a war about censorship. It is a war for the hearts and minds of the world. And it's really about subverting your ability to tell the truth or to discern the truth between, or the difference between totalitarianism and democracy, because you've been falsely led to believe that they're equivalent, and in fact, some people may even believe that, that authoritarian system is better because it allows the government to act with impunity to do things like force you to not go to a park to play with your kid when there's a pandemic going on.